Today I've got a 2013 Cub Cadet. I'm going to be changing the main drive belt on this thing. First thing you want to do, go ahead and pull your deck off, and the deck's pretty easy to pull off on these. It's just got these pins you pull out. You've got a pin here in the front, just pull this out, and then you can slide this right out the side of the mower. Underneath the hood on almost any mower you'll find a sticker, and this will show you the upper drive belt, lower drive belt, pretty much all you're going to need for this job. We'll need a new belt for this thing, and I'll talk more about that later because this is not the same size belt that's currently on it. All you need is some basic hand tools. You need a 7/16 wrench because I'm going to take the battery out, a ratchet, a 5/8 socket, 9/16 and a half. This tool here comes in real handy. This is a spring release tool. You hook the spring, pull it off. We're going to be working with some pretty strong springs. If this sounds like something you want to know more about, welcome to the BaldEagle242 channel. On these hoods, you got it forward, just back it up a little bit. Down in here there's a little pin. Line that up so that comes right out of there. Real easy to get the hood off of this. The reason I want to remove that hood is not really because I have to get under the hood, but I want to tilt this thing up on the side, and that just makes sure I don't break it or crack it. I've already drained all the fuel out of this, and I am going to change the oil also, so I've already drained all the oil out of it. And just for safety here, I always stick my key on the oil dipstick. You don't have to do this to change a belt, but being able to flip this thing up on its side here will make it much easier for me to show you everything in more detail. I've just got a little milk crate there. I'll flip that seat forward and I'll tip this whole mower right up on that. So with no fuel and no oil in it, there's really nothing else to leak. And I'm going to pull the battery out of it. Taking this battery out will serve two purposes. One, it gets it out of our way, and two, you can get to the rear end down in here going through this battery compartment. Right, get this battery out. It's real easy. This is just a spring-loaded clip. I like to take this, push it over this way, and it'll pop right off. Most of the time, a battery uses a 7/16. These cables were just barely tight. That can cause starting issues and also charging issues. Just pull this out, get it out of my way. And then this tray right here just pulls right out. And once you get that out, you can see here, there's our transmission pulley there, the variable drive pulley right there with both belts going around that. I'll show you more once I get it flipped up there, but that's why I take that battery box out, because it makes it much easier to get to everything from back here. And something else here, this mower has the manual engagement, not the clutch, and I'll show you a little bit more of that once I get this flipped up here. This mower is one that has the variable drive transmission. The easiest way to know that, they call it an automatic. It just has a simple forward and reverse, and you control your speed by the foot pedal. If you have a true hydrostatic transmission, it'll have 2 foot pedals, or it'll have a lever for forward and reverse. Right, what I'll do now is just make sure I don't have anything setting on the mower. I've got the battery removed, I've got the oil drained, I don't have any fuel in it. Grab it under the fender, put your hand on the steering wheel, just flip it up. That'll make it real easy so we can get to everything underneath this thing. You can see here, that belt has seen better days. So it's time to replace it. A couple things I'll point out here before I really get started. I like to turn this thing up on its left side so that I can have access to the pedal that moves the tensioning back and forth for your belt. This is your drive belt, and that's all it does. It just pulls that belt up there and tightens that down on a variable pulley back here in the back. The other thing, just to make sure we're working on the right mower, this has the 2 pulleys here, one for your rear drive, one for your deck. If you have a clutch on yours, it's a very similar process, but you'll also have wires hooked up to this for the engagement on the clutch. So this is a manual engagement with the lever on the fender to engage it. Either way, the process is very similar. First thing I'm going to do down here is go ahead and remove this spring. You can move this by hand or with a pry bar or something, but if you have the right tool, I'll show you real easily how to get that spring off there to make this job a lot easier. This tool has a hook on it, and there's a hole in the frame right here. All we're going to do is come in from underneath, hook underneath that, just hook the spring, and then you can pull it down here and just let it back out that hole. And when you put it back on, we'll do it the same way. We'll just grab it down here and we'll hook it under there like that. So this tool makes it real easy to get that on and off of there. And then removing that spring makes it real easy to get this secondary belt off of here. Next thing I'm going to do here is take this off, because hopefully we'll be able to get this pulley off. Sometimes these pulleys, when you take this bolt out, will be rusted onto your shaft so hard you can't get these off. There's a couple ways to do this if you can't get this off. One is you can bend these little tabs up. Those are kind of difficult to bend, and you have to be really careful not to bend your pulley on your drive pulley pulley here. I don't recommend you do this if the mower's tipped up like I've got it here, but if you're just working on it underneath, you can actually loosen the 4 bolts up on the engine, slide the engine back, and that'll give you plenty of room to get that belt off of there without having to destroy this pulley or spend a lot of time trying to get it off there. Sometimes it's just easier just to unbolt the engine and slide it back enough so there's some clearance there. First thing I'll do is go ahead and take this guard off. This is just a guide to keep your belt in place. It's just 2 bolts here, one on left, one on the right. And those were 9/16. Next, we're going to take this bolt here out. This is a 5/8. And if we're really lucky here, this is going to come off. You will have some of these sometimes. Well, this one's going to come off. You will have some of these sometimes that you just flat cannot get them off. And all you're trying to do is get this up here enough so that this belt will miss this guard right here, or this guide, and then you can just kind of rock it off or roll it off there. And then just get this out of the way. You don't have to take this all the way out. Just give it a little bit of play, and that'll give you a little more gap here to get your belt in and out, taking the old one off, putting the new one on. So we got the tension off here, so the belt's out from under those pulleys, and that'll give us plenty of slack up here to pull this off of this crank and just fish it back through there. Pay attention to this because your steering shaft comes down between here. This belt goes on the bottom or the left side of that steering shaft. All right, I flipped this thing back up on its wheels now so I could better show you what I've got down here. You've got 2 belts on this. You've got the upper belt, which is just a short belt that runs around here. This is your rear end pulley. That's your variable drive pulley right there that creates your speed difference. You've got the spring down there that we took off from underneath. So that allows us to take all the tension off of this, and with the tension off of that, we can pretty easily roll this belt off of this variable drive pulley, which we have to do that so that we can get that other belt off of there because it has to come off the top also. And then you can work this other belt off. You do not have to remove any guards to get this off. There's a plate in between this variable drive pulley. Pull that middle plate up as you pull this belt off, and then this belt will come right off and it'll go right back in there. And once you get that out, as long as this isn't hooked on anything, it'll pull right out. They were very lucky that this one didn't break on them because there ain't much left of it. Top belt there still looks very good. I would say it's probably been replaced once before. If you're going to do this, it's really smart to do both of them at the same time. This is a 5/8 by 90 inch belt. The stock belt on this mower is actually 90.6 inches. I would suggest if you can find a 91 inch belt, go with a 91 because there is some adjustments. I'll show you underneath here how to adjust this. But if you want to buy the actual Cub Cadet belt, the belts for these mowers are ridiculously expensive. Something else I'll show you here, I mentioned this earlier. This is the pulley off of this mower, and you can see how that fits down into that pulley very well. So if you have one of the older mowers or a Troy-Bilt or Craftsman, most of those take a 1/2 inch belt. You can see this belt will not work on this pulley. There is a considerable difference between these pulleys. Even though these look about the same, this is for a 5/8 belt and that's for a 1/2 inch belt. But you're not going to be able to get your belt to fit underneath those guards or those guides if you've got this style pulley and you try to put a 5/8 belt on. I'm going to fish this right back down in here just like I did when I took the other one off, and then we're going to flip it back up on its side again, and I'll show you the rest underneath. Not the easiest to try to show you exactly what I'm doing down in here, but we're going to go underneath this bar here, pull this belt back around this variable drive pulley again. This is the pulley on the far left of the mower. And there's 2 plates in here. It's really tough to show you this, but you can pull that center plate up and down. Make sure when you put this belt down in there, that center plate is all the way up. All right, if I can do that holding a camera in one hand, I know you can do it with 2 hands. And once you get that back on there, we can go ahead and put this small second belt or top belt back on. Make sure it's around your transmission pulley, and then do the same thing. Put it right down over this variable drive pulley. And that is really easy if you've got that spring off underneath there. So other than our battery box, pretty much everything we've got to do up here on this side. Right, once you get this thing flipped up again, you can look right back in here and you can see that both of those belts are on that pulley. And what I'll do now is go ahead and hook that spring back up so it's on there, holds tension on everything in the back so we don't knock something loose back there while we're trying to pull the rest of this belt up here in the front. And then just come back through the frame here, hook that spring, pull it down here, get it back in that hole there in the frame, and then you're good to go with that. Just hold tension on pulling this forward, and this can be kind of tricky, but we got to fish this back down through here. Remember, we're going to put it on the left side or the bottom side, since I got it flipped up here, of that steering shaft. We'll just pinch this together, try to make it as small as we can, feed it up through the front here. Belt's a lot stiffer than that old wore out belt, but just loop that around your crank there. And this pulley here, I've still got this loose. This bolt here is loose, so I can create a little bit of slack right there. Pull that over that and under the other one here. This belt goes around that pulley. We'll tighten this back up under this one or on the left side of that. You can go ahead and tighten this down. Alright, and make sure when you put this back on, that's keyed, so it has to be able to slide on and off there. And then pull as much slack in your belt here as you can and just roll it up onto this pulley. Get it to drop down on one side. You got to keep it pulled out enough so this is not restricting it though. Alright, once you get everything lined up, that should push right in there. Once you get that in there, go ahead and put your center bolt back in. And I'll leave that belt guide off until we get our deck belt back on there. I mentioned earlier I would show you how to adjust this for the shorter belt or longer belt, depending on which one you went with. But what we've got to do is adjust this so that there is enough slack so that when the engine is spinning, this right here is loose so that this pulley will spin on this. And that's all that pedal does, is it puts tension on this and tightens this down on this pulley. What you've got to do is come back here. And there's going to be people that tell you can't do this. You do not need to take this nut off here. Take a 1/2 inch wrench on this side and a 9/16 on this side and break these loose, and then we've got to spin this so that we make the shaft longer for a shorter belt or shorter for a longer belt. So go ahead and put your 1/2 inch wrench on this side, 9/16 on this side, break this little jam nut loose, back that off a few threads. And then up here on the front, there is a little Carter pin. Pull this out. Now I've already straightened it out to make it easier for the video, but you'll have to straighten this out on the other side. And then you can kind of reach up here, wiggle this pedal a little bit, get that to pop off. Now what you got to do is just pull this around the back side here. There's not enough room here to spin this real easily on the front, but if you spin this around to the back, since we put a shorter belt on here, we're going to crank this out, make this longer, so it pushes this back straighter. And what I'll do, pull out about 3 turns, 3 full turns, and then I'll pull this back over here, go ahead and hook it up, and then we'll tighten this back up. Remember when you put this on, how this angle was, so you put it back on the same way. Tighten this nut back down to jam this together, and then we'll put our pin back in here. And that will force this down to straighten this belt out to give us as much slack as possible. Once you get that back in there, just take a pair of pliers and bend it over so it doesn't come back out. And then tighten this nut back down. So lengthening that gives us as much slack as possible, forces this down further than it would have went. That gives us as much slack on our belt as we can get, and that creates a situation up here that'll let that belt loosen up enough so that when you let off the drive pedal, so the engine can spin without grabbing that belt to pull it. If you have the option to get the right belt, in this case 90.6 or 90.8, I've seen 2 different sizes in 2 different areas, I would get the correct belt, but this will give you a full understanding of how to replace it regardless of which size belt you use. It's up to you whether you choose to use one that's not the original belt or not. In this case, it was the only belt I could get on a short notice just to get this job done. I'm gonna flip it back up here. We're gonna put some oil in the engine, put some fuel in it. I'll take it out and we'll try it out. You shouldn't have to hit the brake or anything to get it to stop pulling. You just want to let off the pedal. As long as that works, this belt will work perfectly fine. Alright, so we got oil in the engine now, got a little bit of gas in it. I went ahead and put the hood back on, got the deck back on, so this thing's ready to cut. What I'm going to do, go ahead and start it up. The big test will be here. In order for that belt to work, you have to be able to let off this pedal without hitting the brake, and the mower should just sit. When it's sitting on a flat, level ground, it should stop on its own in both forward and reverse. Alright, now I got something else I want to tell you here, and then we'll take this out and test it out. Alright, what I want to say is thank you for watching. If you've made it this far into this video, I sincerely do appreciate it. The number of people that have requested stickers and just correspondence from me has been a little bit overwhelming, and from now until December 31st, 2024, I'm going to be giving away free stickers. I'll cover shipping in the United States or anywhere, UK, Canada, Mexico, as long as a global stamp will get it there. I've got a whole stack of them to give away, so just send me your name, make sure your address is very clear. I put them on the envelope exactly as I receive them. Also, I have a sticker board here. If you have a channel or you want to put put your sticker on this board. When you send me the request for a sticker, just let me know. I'll send you my address so you can send me one here and I'll get it on the board for you. My email address is right here on the screen. It's BaldEagle242 at gmail.com. Send me a request and I'll get it out to you. Let's get this thing out here and try it out. All right, go ahead and start this thing up here. Now the true test is going to be that when we let off this pedal, it's going to stop. The mower's not going to move when this is in gear. And the other thing you want to make sure is you have full range. In other words, you can push the pedal all the way down and you'll get the full range of speed out of this thing. So let's go ahead and start it up here. It'll stop. That's the way it should work. Go ahead and put it in reverse. Same way. Not hitting the brake over here. That's working exactly the way it should work. No brake. Pedal. Let off. It'll roll to a stop. Exactly the way it ought to work. What you want to see right there. And guys, I do want to say thanks for watching. I sincerely do appreciate you being here. Till next time, thanks for watching.